Welcome to the Motherland Manifesto, where we ask the questions about Africa most people are afraid to touch. What if the culture you defend isn't the culture you actually understand? Stay with me, because this conversation might change how you see Africa and yourself. Dear African, you don't get to pick and choose when you want to be African. Africa is not a costume. It is not a weekend identity. It is not a festival decoration. It is not emergency pride you pull out when convenient. Either you respect the civilization or admit you abandoned it and stop speaking in its name. Most of what you defend as African culture is not Africa. It is colonial leftovers, religious editing, imported morality, and movie scripts you mistook for history. Some of you are defending your colonization and calling it tradition. Defending your colonization and calling it tradition. The modern African is selective, very selective. You remember culture only when it helps you control someone. A child talks back, suddenly. In Africa, children respect elders. A woman dresses freely, suddenly. That's not African. A young man wears braids or tattoos, suddenly. That is irresponsible. A woman speaks with authority, suddenly. That's against tradition. But corruption, greed, dishonesty, exploiting your own people, destroying your own community? Suddenly, tradition is quiet. You don't protect African culture. You weaponize it. And weapons are never used for truth. They are used for power. What you call African culture today passed through Europe and Arabia first. Victorian morality rewrote dress codes. Missionaries rewrote gender rules. Colonial governments rewrote power. Foreign religions rewrote spirituality. And after centuries of editing, you inherited the copy and called it the original. A colonized mind defends the cage and swears it is freedom. Defends the cage and swears it is freedom. A cage decorated is still a cage. A cage painted gold is still a cage. Africa before colonization was not chaos. It was organized. It was intellectual. It was philosophical. It was engineered. The Mali Empire built trade networks that connected continents. Universities existed. Libraries existed. Diplomacy existed. Law existed. This was not primitive survival. This was civilization. And leadership was never as simple as men rule, women obey. Look at Queen Nzinga, a strategist, a negotiator, a commander. She sat across from European powers as an equal, not a footnote, an equal. If your version of African culture says women must always be silent, history rejects you. Not debates you, rejects you. Some of you respect colonizers more than you respect your ancestors, and that is the quiet tragedy. Your understanding of Africa is scripted. Generations learned culture from performance instead of lineage. The influence of Nollywood is massive, but when entertainment becomes teacher, fiction becomes education. Performance becomes history. Entertainment becomes doctrine. Some of what you defend online is not heritage. It is screenplay. Imagine foreigners making movies about your religion and calling it fact. You would riot. You would scream disrespect. You would demand bans. Africa has endured that distortion quietly, for generations. African spirituality is mocked by the very children it produced. Not studied, not examined, not understood. Mocked. You are free to believe anything. Faith is personal, but contempt is different. Respect is not conversion. Respect is maturity. You don't have to practice ancestral traditions to admit they contain philosophy, ethics, cosmology, psychology. A people who spit on their roots slowly erase themselves, not overnight, slowly, quietly, generation by generation. No civilization survives by insulting its foundation. One of the biggest lies told to modern Africans is that strict patriarchy is ancient. History shows complexity. Women controlled markets, women commanded armies, women ran spiritual institutions, women negotiated treaties. Colonial systems hardened hierarchy, imported religion fossilized it, and now you silence women and call it African culture. That is not tradition. That is edited history. Some men are defending colonial gender roles while pretending they defend Africa. Watch how the same people behave overseas. Polite, measured, respectful. They understand boundaries, pluralism, dignity. But at home, culture becomes excuse. Tradition becomes shield. You respect foreign culture out of fear, but disrespect your own out of familiarity. That is not pride. That is insecurity wearing traditional clothing. 2026 is not the year of ignorance. It is the year of awareness. Choose. Learn Africa deeply or stop speaking in its name. Read real history. Study indigenous governance. Understand ancestral philosophy. Respect traditions even if you never practice them. Because a civilization survives only when its children stop performing it and start understanding it. Africa does not need costume wearers. It needs conscious heirs. If this message moved you, don't let it end here. Like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe because the conversation is just beginning. This is not content. This is memory. This is responsibility. This is the Motherland Manifesto.